Welcome to our Christ Central morning devotional. It's Monday morning, Monday the 9th of November. My name is Julian. I'm going to be leading us today in our continued journey through the Gospel of Mark. So today we're in Mark chapter 11 and I'm starting reading at verse 27. But before I start, let's just have a bit of a recap of where we've got to. So Jesus is now back on his final journey back up to Jerusalem. He's arrived. We spoke a bit about last week about arriving with a crowd and how some of them were afraid and some of them didn't really know what was going on. We also looked last week about how on arrival Jesus went to the temple and turfed out all the moneylenders and traders that were there and generally hacked people off no end. So he's arrived. There's been a huge crowd at his arrival. People have put cloaks under his feet and he's ridden in on a donkey. People have waved palm branches, and we looked a little bit about how this could point to some messianic prophecies of the coming king from the Old Testament last week as well. So we can see that the established authorities, as in the church or synagogue, the leaders, religious leaders, are possibly a little bit uncomfortable at this point. And now we come to this next section, which is the beginning of a few questions or a few little stories talking about Jesus' authority or tackling some thorny issues. And so that's what we're going to look at today. Pardon me. So verse 27. They arrived again in Jerusalem, and while Jesus was walking in the temple courts, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders came to him. By what authority are you doing these things? They asked. And who gave you authority to do this? Jesus replied, I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I am doing these things. John's baptism, was it from heaven or from men? Tell me. They discussed it amongst themselves and said, if we say from heaven, he will ask, well, why didn't you believe him? But if we say from men, they feared the people, for not everyone held that John really was a prophet. So they answered, we don't know. Jesus said, neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things. So Jesus is in the temple courts. It's a public place. The leaders, plural, religious leaders, have come up to him in a public place and asked a question. And I'm imagining that there's a certain amount of, well, if we sort this out in public, then once and for all, everything will be resolved. And it's a meeting of two schools of thought. And if the religious leaders are right, then presumably Jesus would have to leave tail between his legs, slightly humiliated, and everything will go back to normal. And they possibly haven't considered what they're going to do if they're wrong. There's a question here of how the religious leaders, how the temple are governing, how the temple is governed. And because when Jesus gives them a response, they look at it in a slightly pragmatic way. What can we say? They've considered the answers and decided what they're going to say in view of, well, they don't want to annoy the people. They fear the people slightly, but equally they don't want to be caught by the populist everyone going out to John and being baptized. Because if you remember back in Mark 1, lots of people went out to be baptized. So the religious leaders are slightly trapped here. And I was wondering if there was a parallel between how we perceive them and how they are sometimes the baddies in the gospel, and then what are we doing with the church as well, and where's that going? And are we governing in a we're going to go and make disciples of all people way, or are we governing and running our churches in a this is what we expect, how can we make sure we stay safe kind of way? And backing onto that is the question of authority as well. So I've left my other book on the other side of the desk. Is our view of God as a sovereign God who is ruling and reigning over the entire universe and can be trusted? is he just? Or, bear with me, or how different is the God of the Bible from the God of modern Christendom? The concept of the deity which prevails most widely today, even among those who profess to give heed to the scriptures, is a blasphemous travesty of the truth. So is that true as well? Have we lost our respect for God? Have we reduced God to our image, or are we always in awe of a mighty sovereign God? And that was a bit of a challenge as well, because, well, do we see Jesus as having all this authority? And if we do, what are we going to do about it? And that's always the question at the back of the mind. So we've read this, we've got some goodies, we've got some baddies, we can see an outcome. We sort of think, aha, we know how this story ends. But there is a question on us as well, about where we put the authority of Jesus and what impact that has on our daily lives.